There we go. We have a couple more people that are likely going to join us in the next few minutes. Actually, we see a few more people jumping on right now. But we'll get started and we'll record this, and so you can refer back to it later. We have Vaughn is on as well, who, if you have any questions as we go through, then maybe just send out a little chat message over on the right-hand side, and that way we know you've got a question, and I'll just keep everybody muted so we don't get any feedback. But we absolutely want to hear your questions as we go through, because this is not necessarily a simple topic to talk about Dynamics 365. There are a number of complicating matters when it comes to the licensing structure, so we do absolutely want to get your thoughts and feedback and answer any questions you may have today. So let's first talk about what the agenda is. So we have about an hour, and if we can get this done quicker, then great. But we're going to try to keep this within the next hour and end by about 11:30. So we're going to talk about what Dynamics 365 is. We're going to do a quick demo so you can see Dynamics 365 in action, learn about a couple of the new features that are there, but we're probably going to spend most of our time talking about the licensing structure changes so that you understand, being an existing Dynamics CRM user, how you may transition into the new licensing structure, because it is very different. So we'll spend a lot of time talking on that. And then I'll explain a little bit about the roadmap of where the product and products are going into the future, and then talk about there's some significant differences coming into the future between both the online and the on-premise version. And although we have question and answers here at the end, like I said, if you have questions as we go through here, just enter them into the chat area, then we'll unmute you and be able to talk a little bit further. But we definitely are looking for your comments and feedback. All right, so what is Dynamics 365? Well, this is Microsoft's their spin. It unifies CRM and ERP together into one application that seamlessly works together, and they've really changed the terminology onto more of a functional perspective within a business, where they define things as sales, customer service, field service operations, financials, marketing, and project services. Very different terminology used than in the past, where it was talking about ERP and CRM. They're really talking now more sales, customer service, marketing, financials. So they're speaking to those functional units within a company, as opposed to the product names, which would be something like CRM or ERP. So 365 is really the coming together of CRM and ERP, so that it's one common platform for all those elements to work together seamlessly. Now, that working together seamlessly, we'll talk about is premature. We think it's a good approach for Microsoft. It's a good start to having 365 bring together those products natively. But in its first revision, coming just out recently, it is a little clunky, but I'll speak to that a little more in a minute. So essentially what Microsoft has done is created two variations of Dynamics 365. We're going to be talking almost exclusively today about the Enterprise Edition. And that's because the Business Edition of Dynamics 365 is not fully baked yet. It's not really done. It's not actually available in many forms at the moment. And I think for most everybody on the phone today, it's the Enterprise Edition that you'll be concerned with. And Microsoft draws a line and says their focus is Enterprise is for businesses 250 users and up, and Business Edition will be below that. But honestly, that's not what we think. I think it's a misconception from Microsoft's perspective. It's the functionality in Dynamics Enterprise Edition. If that's what you're looking for, then that's the product that you should focus on. If you're looking for a more scaled back functionality, then look at the Business Edition. It should not be by the number of seats. You talk to Microsoft, they're going to be talking about number of seats. I think if you talk to us and if you understand the product, it's more on the functionality side. And what they've done is they've brought the Enterprise Edition together with the CRM. So Dynamics CRM is now, the full capabilities of CRM is inside of Dynamics 365. And when they talk about the financials or the operational aspects of 365, they're really speaking about Dynamics AX, which is the ERP part. On the business edition, the elements of the business edition, like sales, marketing, and service, is Dynamics CRM under the hood. You'll see in a moment, it looks and feels exactly the same. But the financials element of the business edition is a evolution or a variation of Dynamics Nav, which has been codenamed Madeira. So you may have seen or heard the codename Madeira, and that's essentially what the financials element of business edition is. So it's AX and CRM in the Enterprise Edition, and it's Nav and CRM in the Business Edition. So when we look at the packaging and how they break it up, this can be a little bit confusing, and we'll coming back to this the layout a number of times this morning. They've changed the definition into something called apps and plans. So no longer do we talk about CALs or client access licenses or buying a license to CRM or a license to your ERP. You speak to using an app or having access to a plan of apps. That's the new terminology in the world of Dynamics 365. What we have are individual apps. I'll talk about Power Apps and Flow in a little minute, but those are new products that Microsoft has released, hence they're a little bit lighter blue. This darker blue, sales, field service, customer service, project, and marketing, those are all Dynamics CRM. They've just siloed them and broken them up into functional segments. So you can choose to acquire a license for just the sales functionality of CRM and nothing else. Or you could say, I just want the customer service functionality and nothing else. And what this allows for is flexibility in your organization, so you can have different people have different access to different apps. So your salespeople may only access the sales app, your customer service people only the customer service app, and maybe some people access multiple apps. If you're going to access multiple elements of CRM or Flow or Power Apps or operations, and operations really is Dynamics AX, then you want to look at getting a plan. So you can license a user for a plan or for an individual app. An element here of this to consider is that the cost of individual apps, as soon as you want somebody in your organization to have access to more than one app, it makes sense for them to buy a plan for them. I don't have pricing on here because pricing is also dependent upon your number of users, of what you currently have for transition. It can get a little complicated. There is a slide I'll have in a moment that shows some baseline US pricing, but if essentially the cost of 2 apps is greater than the cost of a plan. So as soon as you look at users who need access to more than one area, then you'll need to consider getting that user a license for a plan. So Plan 1 gives you access to everything within CRM as well as Power Apps and Flow. And if you are also using and considering Dynamics AX, then that's when you want to get Plan 2. Or you buy operations separately or any of these apps separately. There's another interesting concept that they have created in 365, which is the idea of a team member access. So with these above here, with Power Apps, Flow, Sales, and so forth, when you acquire a license to these elements, then you have full access to use all the features within that app. But you have people that work across an entire organization and maybe have touch points in different areas, and it doesn't make sense for them to necessarily have the app access to just one app. They need to touch on a number of them, but maybe in a read-only fashion or in a light way. And so you can license your staff so that they have a team member license, which allows them to view data across all aspects of CRM and AX and Power Apps and such, but limits their ability to edit data. So I'm not going to get into all the specifics because there's a nice big chart that outlines all of the things that they can and can't do, but it is a nice new feature, and it is substantially cheaper than, so essentially the Dynamics team member SKU, if I get my numbers right off the top of my head, is around $15 a user, in that range, to have them have read-only access to all the data within your organization, or whatever you want to grant them, as opposed to an individual app, which is, and I apologize if I'm off on this, but it's in and around the $95 or $100 per user per app. But we will get you accurate pricing depending upon your specific scenario. So that's where you can give us a shout and we can talk specifics about what your scenario might be. If you look at the business edition, this is what I meant about it's not fully baked yet. So this is where we're a little bit disappointed with Microsoft in how they came to market so quickly with Dynamics 365. We believe that it's the right decision to bring these together because they have mature products that can speak well together, but they've kind of gone too quickly when it comes to how they've packaged the business edition especially. So in the business edition, it's not even available yet to buy the plan, which will include Power Apps, financials, sales, and marketing. There is even talk about a customer service element. Essentially what these pieces will be is Dynamics CRM, and this element will be a variation of Dynamics Nav called Madeira. And then Power Apps will be there as well. There is also a team member version of this SKU where it'll be a less expensive one that grants read-only access to across the whole breadth of product. And again, at the core, which I want to make sure everybody understands, is that the benefit of 365, a Dynamics 365, is that the integration between financials and your sales and marketing data, whether it's the business edition or whether it's the Enterprise Edition, the integration between operations and the CRM elements, is to become very seamless. I say become because it's not actually there quite yet. There is some loose integration between AX and CRM initially in their first version of 365 for Dynamics, but it's not fully baked yet. All right. I want to talk for a moment about Power Apps and then also Flow. As you saw in that graph or chart, there are a number of, there's two new apps that are available. So Power Apps, there's a link to a YouTube video. We're going to send a follow-up email after this webinar so that you can get some more information, and you should watch the video. I'm not going to play it on the webinar because playing recorded videos don't always work and stream very well. But essentially what Power Apps is, it's a tool that allows you or your organization to build very quickly and very easily focused applications that can run on a smartphone or on a tablet or even on your PC for that matter, that give you access to very specific elements of your data in Dynamics 365 or any data for that matter. So if your field, if you have salespeople out on the road and you just want to give them access to the list of customer data, then it is very easy for you to create a Power App that they can open on their smartphone and allows them to view customer information, and that's it. Now, if you want to give them access maybe to opportunities or allow them to see what marketing material has been distributed to people, so you can create these very focused and streamlined apps in a very point-and-click manner without having to do any development or coding. And the underlying data for these Power Apps can be Dynamics 365, but where it's going to go into the future is interesting because the structure is there for these Power Apps to reach out to other sets of data. So if you have information in maybe an inventory system or in another marketing system or even a different financials from 365, then you can connect your Power App to those other sources. Watch the video when we send it out. There's a nice little tutorial there. And I'll quickly show you where it appears in Dynamics 365 in a moment. So yeah, here's a slide here. It allows you to connect. So something I should talk about, this common data model. This is one of the substantial announcements that came with the rollout of 365, and that's this concept of a common data model where Microsoft is, let's make it technical for a second, but they're abstracting the structure of the information that is underlying in CRM and in your financials, be it NAV or Madeira and AX, into this common data model that exposes that information out to where the Power Apps and other systems can interact with it. So the simple example would be a customer list. CRM has the concept of accounts, a list of companies. AX has the concept of a business that you might have transactions and do financial records against, but they're sitting in two different systems. So rather than tying and reading the two together, they abstract them out into a common structure, so a common table called accounts, and you can now create processes and Power Apps against that account table, but it's not actually against the account table in CRM or the account table in AX. May sound a little confusing, but it's in its beginning version, and we think that as this matures as a platform, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to streamline and create workflows and processes across this common set of data across two very different systems between CRM and AX. Microsoft Flow. So that's another app that comes with the Dynamics 365 product offering now. And essentially what it is, it's if you've used workflows in CRM, which likely a lot of you have, it's a great way of automating a workflow process. Send an email when this person's account goes out of balance, or notify somebody when a new opportunity closes over a certain value. Those are some common flows, workflows that might happen. But because now we have this common data model that can reach across data sets from across many different systems, and we're bringing together CRM and AX, or Madeira and NAV, what Microsoft Flow allows you to do is to create a workflow across multiple systems, not just within a certain system like CRM. Above is just a screenshot of some pre-built templates that can automate some processes, and you'll notice there are non-Microsoft products listed here, whether it's SharePoint attachments that go into a SharePoint, or over here we've got something when a tweet appears on your Twitter account, automatically put something in Dropbox. So Microsoft is taking very much that open stance, saying it's not, this Flow engine is not going to be restricted to just Microsoft products, that it's going to be able to work across products. So an example might be as simple as when you land a new customer, maybe you want automatically a tweet to go out on your Twitter account saying, yay, we just closed X, Y, and Z company. Now, that might be a little dangerous in case you've got NDAs in place, but that's an example of a function happening in CRM that then triggers an action somewhere else. Maybe when somebody attaches a spreadsheet to a project that you have in CRM, you want that spreadsheet to be emailed to you so you can look at it on your phone, for example. So that could be another flow that would work across systems between email, CRM, and such. This is just a quick screenshot of the Flow engine. It's very much a point and click, where you can click and say, when this happens, here's a condition. If the condition is yes, then perform a function. And it's simply a matter of clicking these buttons and following the prompts. There's really not a need to get into coding. And the idea is for individuals to create these flows so that it makes them individually more productive. In its initial version, this got rolled out about the initial beta version of Flow a few months ago. There are not a lot of controls for rolling this out across a bigger organization and controlling what flows, pushing out flows to people. And though that functionality is improving, initially it was a tool for an individual to create their own flows. And we realize that that's not practical in many organizations to train them, all the staff, on how to do this. But it's definitely something that is growing and maturing, and we see this as being a very functional tool that's part of the 365 platform. Okay, I'm going to jump into a quick demo. Like I said before, if you've got questions as we go, just send a chat message and then we can unmute you and answer whatever it is. But I'm going to flip out a PowerPoint here. Sorry. I'm going to get into 365. So some people on the call may already have seen this. If you haven't, this is what you'll eventually move into for those that are on CRM Online. If you're on-premise, you're obviously going to stay with the current version that you have, but if you're CRM Online, then you will be migrated to this new interface, either already or you will in the near future. So when you log on, we've got this idea of apps. So right now installed is a sales app, the customer service app, and because a custom solution was installed in this instance, there's another app that shows up. But essentially, you can group your functionality of your 365 into these concepts of apps. In this demo, I do not have AX turned on, so I'm just focusing on the CRM side of things. We're just going to focus on that and not AX. So as you acquire other apps, there is a place you can go called App Source, where you can download other apps and acquire them and use them against your 365 instance. We're just going to focus on the out-of-the-box for right now. So if I click on Sales, for example, and this is a demo environment online that I'm working with right now. When I get into it, you can see it's all demo data, very similar looking to the current version of CRM Online or 2016 that was up until the end of October. Same concept. I can go to Contacts, click on Contacts, I get a grid of contacts. That's all somewhat the same. What's different though is this Dynamics 365, when I click on it, I get a new panel that slides in from the side, which shows me my different apps. So if I want to switch from sales to customer service, so remember, we can license our employees and staff differently, so some people only access sales and some only customer service. In this case, I have access to both. I can switch over to customer service, and now I only have access to the customer service elements, which might be, again, counts and contacts, but cases and queues and products and reports and such, but I don't have access to the sales data. Whereas if I go over to sales and click on sales, now I have access to all the elements to do with marketing and sales, contacts, leads, and counts, and so forth, but I don't have access to cases. Marketing is part of, the base marketing is part of the sales app. So that's the logical breakdown of these two sections. To be quite honest, aside from the navigation, there are only a handful of new features. I mean, there are a number of new features, but there's really only one other that I wanted to point out to you, because really I think the interface is the same, the functionality is generally the same. I'm going to go to Accounts. What they have finally been able to do is, actually not Accounts, I turned it on for Contacts. Let's go to Contacts here. Finally, we have the concept of editable grids. So if the audio was turned on, some of you might be clapping because it is a very nice new feature that's been enabled. But this idea of editable grids, you can turn it on entity by entity, but now I can go in here and click on the grid and I can edit this, that email address, or maybe I can go and modify this phone number and change that phone number, and then go down here and click on the item and go and change this phone number as well. So I can edit the grid inline. Rather than having to open the records. So this is a really nice new feature that they have enabled. Notice some of them are locked because those might have references and so on. But what we can also do is drag and drop and move columns around. So something that you might be used to in other applications, this is a nice feature. And I can also group my data right here and maybe group by company name. So group all my contacts by company name, and I can see everybody from Adventure Works or Alpine Ski House and such. So nice new functionality out of in Dynamics 365 that is nice. So we can manage through the interface this way. We can also go and click on the little tile over here in the top left and have access to other applications that are in our family of products. So if you have Office 365 as well, then you would have access to Word and Excel online and PowerPoint and your email and OneDrive. And notice this is where I can access Flow and Power Apps. So if I wanted to create another Flow, that external engine that can run a process for me, I simply click on Flows. I can now create my own set of flows. I don't have any right now. I want to create a new one that's blank. I can say, okay, what do I want to start with? I can choose, here's a number of actions. So when something happens in chat or in Salesforce, or when something happens in Dynamics 365 or in Nav or on Facebook, do something. Let's just say when 365, when a record is created in Dynamics 365, it takes a sec for it to know what instance. So it's looking up that it's my demo instance. But then I can go through and pick for this instance of CRM, for what entity is created, what I want the next step to be. Do I want it to add an action, or do I want it to add a condition? Okay, add a condition. If the condition here is yes, then do something. If it's no, then do something else. So I simply point and click, and I'm able to create my flow. I'm not going to go through an entire flow, but I just wanted to show that quickly. Let's leave that page. So the other thing I talked about was Power Apps. So it's an option here in my tile that I can go and access. And so Power Apps is, again, that place where I can create an app that I can run on any phone, any device. There are some sample apps. I can connect to any data source, and I simply go through, and this may look a little confusing, but we've got, what do you call it? We got a question here. Is Flow available for on-premise? So we'll get to the on-premise version. It will be available for on-premise once you've migrated to the Dynamics 365. Now you can buy Flow independently, so it doesn't have, you can actually acquire it as an independent standalone app. There is a free version available right now, but it's also part of 365, and I'll talk about in a moment the difference between the on-prem and the online. So anyway, I can go through this process here of creating an app. I simply click Get Started. I want to use the Web Studio, and then I start clicking, and it's going to guide me through the process of creating an app to do something. Here's what I want: the app to connect to 365, or to, remember that common data model I talked about? So that's the idea there. Oh, sorry, Martha, I missed you. Another question there about does GP fit into 365, or is it a separate cell? It is separate at the moment. I'm actually going to show a timeline slide that will talk about where the different GP, NAV, SL, and AX all kind of fit together, but GP is not part of Dynamics 365. So in this case, I can say I want to create an app that works off the common data model. I click, I want it to be a phone layout, I want it to be part of this data source, and then I can move on from there. I'm not going to do it all on the presentation today. But essentially, what I wanted to get across is that 365 looks and feels much like CRM does at the moment, except that it's just broken up into this concept of apps. So I can click between apps, which is just a segmentation of the different functionality in CRM. And then we've got the addition of Power Apps and Flow, which are good, but they're not mature yet, I don't think. All right, and we got those great editable grids. There's a handful of other new features, but we won't go into all of them today. Okay. So license structure. Just to spend a couple more minutes talking about this, because some of the next slides are going to get a little confusing, and we get it. It is a little confusing. You know, we're not here to try to feed you the Microsoft Kool-Aid. We're here to give you our honest answer, our honest perspective on it. And like I've said in the beginning, it's the right direction for Microsoft, but they've been a little quick to roll out the licensing construct, and it can get a little confusing. This is where we can have a one-on-one discussion with you to talk through what the translation might look like. But when I talked about the concept between apps and plans, apps is when you've got a person who fits into that nice little box where they just need to work within a certain box of functionality. Let's just say it's sales, so you just buy them the app. When a person needs to access functionality across multiple apps, then consider getting them a plan. That way they can access functionality that exists in any app available within the 365 platform. And then this concept of team members is where we have somebody who can execute a basic process, they can read the data, they can get the intelligence from the information across the entire platform of 365, but in a limited capacity for modifying the data. So like I said, these are apps and these are plans, and then the team member SKU allows you to access, read data across the entire component. So I'm going to get you ready for the next slide, which is now how do you transition from CRM today to Dynamics 365 in the future? And here's how you do it. Sorry, I have to laugh. The dollar prices are in US dollars here. This is base price, but we'll talk to you individually about what the different options are. But let me just step through this, because how you move through CRM Online to Dynamics 365 is different than how you might move through on-prem. So let me go through these at a sort of a high level here. If you currently have CRM Online and you currently have a professional license, then that grants you access to both sales and customer service. Essentially, you get grandfathered into a plan. So you, by having the professional license, have access to Plan 1, which gives you access to everything. If you have a basic SKU, then if you use the basic SKU as lead management, then you have access to sales. But if you use the basic SKU in a manner for doing case management, then you have access to customer service. If you need both, then you need to step up to a plan. So this is one of the things that we're not happy about, and I think some of our customers aren't, and I'm being honest, is that there's a lot of customers out there who use both lead, opportunity management, sales aspect of CRM, and case management. There's a very definitive line in Microsoft's licensing structure now where case management exists in customer service and not in sales. So if you touch both of those, then you need essentially a plan license. And I think there are many people in an organization that do touch both, maybe sales data as well as customer service data. So that's where plans are going to become pronounced. If you have an essential or an employee self-service license, then you can opt to go to the team member SKU, which is substantially cheaper going on to into the future. But essentially the essential SKU transitions in the team member SKU. And then if you had the field service, project services, then it's a straight line. And there is no specific one for social engagement. It is actually included in the plans now, or in the apps above. So they've taken the social engagement components of CRM and they've kind of fit them into the plans. So that's if you have CRM Online and how those licenses will transition. I'll speak in a moment about when those licenses kick in and how, but this is the concept of where you currently are, what you use it for, what you will transition to in the new world, and if you need multiple apps, then you'll transition to a plan. I think this is kind of confusing because we're living in the old construct of CRM licensing and we're having to move to the new construct. So that's where a lot of confusion can come in. But for a lot of existing or new customers that come into CRM for the first time, or now, sorry, Dynamics 365 for the first time, you don't know any of this old legacy structure of licensing. You're just looking at it at these new apps, and apps and plans kind of make sense. Where it gets complicated is when you move from the old structure to the new structure. That's where we're here to help you figure out what's the best way. If you're on-premise, so if you have CRM on-premise, then it's a little bit different because there is no plan currently. I don't know that there ever will be, but we'll see, for the full capability of Dynamics 365 to be available on-premise. That should be a little bit of a warning. I know I'm jumping ahead a bit because I said we talk about CRM Online and on-prem, but Microsoft won't say it, but the end is near for on-premise. You're going to have less and less, I guess, parallel functionality rolled out between on-premise and online. If you look back about 2 or 3 years ago, there were more features and updates being rolled out to the on-premise version, the version that's installed locally on your network, as opposed to online, it took longer for new features to come out on online. It's flipped now, where online gets new functionality and updates about once every 2, 3, 4 months, and on-premise, it's on-premise locally now. If you've got it, it's really more around once a year. We see that as being the future. I don't think Microsoft in the next few years is going to get rid of on-premise completely, but there's going to be greater and greater disparity between the two different systems. But for those that have CRM on-premise and want to stay on-premise, in the new year will be Dynamics 365 on-premise will be available, which is essentially just CRM. It does not include AX. Therefore, the transition between your current structure to the new one is a little simpler. Like I said before, there is no concept of plans because it is a simple idea. There is no AX, and the cost of the applications is less because because there really is you're just moving over into the functionality of CRM. So Pro CALs are both customer sales and service, and basic CALs can go to either sales or customer service, or you can drop down to a cheaper team member SKU. Another nice thing is that there is no extra license in the future for CRM Server. So you simply buy the licenses you need or the apps you need, and if you want to install it locally, you can. You do not have to pay separately for a server license anymore. Actually, let me just, before I go to the roadmap, talk about the timing of transition, because there's a number of different scenarios here. One is that you currently have licenses, maybe you are online, currently using CRM Online in the old format, because it was November 1st when this all happened, very, very quickly, November 1st. So in the new world, you're going to need to think about what apps you're going to need or what plans you're going to need. That time of making the decision of what you need to move to is based upon the date of the renewal of your contract. Whether you realize it or not, everybody has a contract, even if you are online or on-premise. When you buy your license, if you buy it on-premise and you paid for it all up front in what's called the Microsoft Open Business License, you essentially agreed to a 2-year contract where you get new version. We get the latest version for the next 2 years, even though you paid all up front. So at the end of that 2-year period, if you want to maintain that access to all the latest versions of Dynamics 365, at that 2-year renewal point is when you have to decide, how am I going to transition? If you're in CRM Online and you're paying month to month, whether you realize it or not, you are engaging in a yearly contract. So whenever you started that CRM Online instance and paid your first month, that is the beginning of your yearly contract. And at the end of that 12-month period, you're automatically rolled over into another 12-month period. At the end of whatever 12-month period you're currently in, and we have the dates for everybody on the call, so you can talk to us and we'll tell you when your 12-month contract is up, it's at that point that you need to decide how I transition between what CRM Online licenses I currently have into whatever apps or plans I am going to transition to. Even if you're using the old version of CRM, you still need to transition to the new apps and plans. Now, the pricing, the street price of Dynamics 365 is substantially higher than what you're currently paying. And what Microsoft has decided is to lessen the blow. They have created a 3-year transition pricing option where essentially you don't suddenly go from paying, sorry, I'm off the top of my head, $68 a month for a professional CAL to suddenly having to pay, in this case, US dollars, from $65 US to $115 for a plan. And to have the same functionality, there is a transition SKU that you can move on that renewal date. You'll move into a transition SKU. We'll get you all the pricing. That is more than what you're paying now, roughly a little bit, but much less than the plan. You sit on that for 3 years, and at the end of that 3-year term, then we're into the pricing that is whatever current at that point in time. So if you're looking at these numbers going, oh geez, that's much, much more, unfortunately, the message is that it is a little bit more expensive. Now, there is a lot of new functionality coming out. The benefit of this common data model, the apps and flow, and this integration across multiple systems, it does add a lot of value, but that burden and sting is lessened by this transition SKU option, which will happen for 3 years. I know it's complicated. Hopefully I've explained it a little bit, but I think one-on-one conversations will help clear that up. Like I said, if you got questions, just enter the questions, or I can unmute you and we can have a conversation. But about the roadmap, because I know I believe Martha had a question about that. Microsoft has said that they're committed to their existing applications, ERP applications, GP, Nav, SL. They're going to continue them on into the future, but they're not going to be rolled into 365. So 365 on the enterprise side is AX, and on the business side is going to be what they call Project Madeira, which is essentially a variation of Dynamics Nav. I know there's a number of people on the call today that are on GP, and don't worry, GP is not going away, but it's not, as I'm sure you know from working with it, it's not a webified ERP system. It's not one that can easily transition into an online web experience, and therefore it wasn't the choice that they made, whereas Nav and AX have been on a path to becoming an online service, and therefore it was what was rolled into the Dynamics 365 and AX. I know the next question might be, well, do I need to transition to Madeira or GP? I think it's too soon to try to decide that. The initial release of Madeira is doing okay, but not great. I wouldn't recommend anybody jump in right away. I think we need to see how things play out over the next 6 or 12 months to see how quickly they're adapting, improving, and integrating AX and Madeira into the 365 platform to be able to make that call. But for now, there are committed roadmaps for GP and for Nav and for SL in their current form, and I don't think you need to be too concerned about that at this point in time. To speak to the online and versus on-premise, and I've kind of alluded to this already, that Microsoft's focus is with online. That's where their energy is, that's where their effort is for rolling out new capability and new functionality when it comes to CRM functions or AX or Madeira or Nav for that matter. Their focus is there. They still have effort being delivered towards the on-premise, but far more is being delivered to online. In Canada, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but there has been some concern in the past about data residency, or the idea of where the data exists. Does it exist on premise? Or I don't want it to exist outside of Canada. I have rules or constraints against that. I don't want it to sit on a data center out of the US. In Canada, this summer, we opened 2 data centers, Microsoft data centers, one in Toronto, and I think the other one's in Montreal, if I'm correct, where you can choose to have your Office 365, your CRM, your Dynamics 365 locally resident in Canada. That helps with performance and latency, as well as concerns over data residency. So no longer do we have that concern, I believe. But there still is a desire and a need to wrap your arms around the servers and have them locally so you can manage them from a performance perspective or integration or just pure security. That is becoming now a more difficult decision when you look at the product roadmap and evolution of it compared to online and on-premise. So the decision may still be to go on-premise, but it needs to be decided knowing that you're going to have less functionality as frequently in my on-premise instance than I will with my online. Not everybody needs on-premise, and if you need online, then great. The other pro and con to online is that you get new features rolled out all the time, which is great value add. The downside is you get new features rolled out all the time, which may cause confusion or be unnecessary depending on your business. So there are pros and cons to both, and our perspective is you need to look at each individual organization's preference and decide which way you want to go. So we're at 11:16 here. Does anybody have any questions? I've tried to give a high-level overview of the platform. If you have specific questions, then reach out to us, to myself, to Vaughn, to Scott, and we'd happy to have a one-on-one conversation about how this might impact you directly. But if you've got a question, please raise your hand and we'll try to answer it. If you don't have a question, then that's the end of the webinar for today, and we'll follow up with a link to a recording of this, as well as a link to the videos and a position paper. So we've written a 3-page, 4-page position paper, which communicates our perspective, pretty much what I just told you, but in written form of where things are going with 365. And again, to reiterate, we think it's the right decision by Microsoft because they got mature products in a very robust online platform. They've just kind of missed the mark on the complexity of the licensing and how they've transitioned existing customers into it. That's a bit challenging, but we're here to work through that with you. And we think things like the common data model that I talked about and the Power Apps and Flow are going to be great value adds for you going forward as they start to mature as products. We'll pause for a sec if anybody has any questions. Oh, you're very welcome. Hopefully you've found this interesting. All right, well, I'll hang on for the call for a little while longer if you've got a question. Otherwise, we appreciate your time and attention today, and we hope you have a great day. And if you're up in our area, we're getting about a foot of snow right now. So if you're into skiing, strap the boots on, and hopefully have a good time skiing this weekend. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.